The Galactic Council chamber was a grand spectacle of power, its walls adorned with the banners of countless species that had bent to the will of the dominant factions. Seated at the center of the gathering was High Chancellor Vroth, his elongated form shimmering with the bioluminescent patterns of his species, a natural sign of smug superiority. Around him, other alien representatives murmured in agreement as they watched the holographic display of Earth spinning slowly above the table. "We must discuss the humans," Vroth announced, his voice a low, resonating hum that commanded attention. "Their presence in the galactic fold is quaint, yet their persistence is becoming an annoyance." His luminous gaze swept across the chamber. "Their reliance on inferior species is both laughable and telling of their limitations." Another representative, a crustacean-like being from the Gresh Collective, clicked its mandibles in what passed for laughter. "They keep weak, non-productive creatures as companions. Small mammals for emotional comfort, winged pests that serve no practical function. Truly, a species so attached to sentimentality cannot be a threat." The laughter spread through the chamber, a chorus of alien voices united in their dismissal of humanity. A holographic display shifted, showing images of Earth's domestic animals, dogs, cats, birds, even hamsters. The assembly erupted into open ridicule, mocking the absurdity of these pets amidst the galaxy's vast and often brutal ecosystem. At the far end of the room, Captain Elias Gray sat in silence, his expression impassive. As humanity's representative, he had grown accustomed to such derision. The aliens always underestimated humans. He watched as more images appeared, displaying Earth's cities, wildlife, and ecosystems. The commentary from the Council was predictable, snide remarks about humanity's primitive defenses and their attachment to harmless life forms. When the laughter subsided, a reptilian delegate with emerald scales leaned forward. "Surely, if they invest so much in protecting such frail creatures, it speaks to their lack of evolutionary fitness. Sentimentality has no place in war." Gray finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Perhaps you misunderstand. It's not sentimentality. It's understanding. These creatures you dismiss as weak have lived alongside us for millennia. They've adapted to us, and we to them. They are not just companions, they are allies. And you would do well to remember that." The room quieted for a moment before the High Chancellor broke the silence with a dismissive wave. "Empty words. Earth's defenses are as quaint as their choices in animals. If humanity is foolish enough to rely on such creatures, they will fall swiftly under the weight of true power." The Council's decision was unanimous. An invasion fleet was to be dispatched, a show of force to remind humanity of its place. As the meeting adjourned, Gray stood and walked out without another word. Inside, his mind was already turning. He had warned them. They would learn the hard way. While the Council scoffed at humanity's bond with its creatures, Gray knew the truth. What the aliens saw as weakness was their greatest miscalculation. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The fleet arrived in Earth's orbit with an overwhelming display of force. Massive warships blotted out the stars, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of leveling continents. The Galactic Council's representatives monitored the invasion remotely, confident that the humans would capitulate once their fragile defenses crumbled. Their scouts had already reported minimal resistance. Earth's planetary defenses were primitive by galactic standards, and its military forces were scattered and underpowered. The first wave of landing parties descended on rural territories, areas deemed low risk for resistance. They expected to find panicked populations and disorganized attempts at defense. What they encountered instead was silence. Entire towns seemed abandoned, homes left empty as if humanity had already resigned to defeat. The invaders spread out cautiously, scanning for life signs, but their technology failed to pick up anything significant. Then came the first attack. A scouting team patrolling a forested region vanished without a trace. Drones sent to investigate returned damaged, their feeds showing only flickers of movement in the shadows, glimpses of fur, glowing eyes, and the glint of sharp teeth. The attackers left no bodies, only blooded scraps of alien armor and tracks leading deeper into the wilderness. The reports reached the fleet commanders, but they dismissed it as human guerrilla tactics. They pushed forward, confident in their technological superiority. The second attack was far more coordinated. In the rocky terrain of the Appalachians, a platoon of heavily armed soldiers was ambushed in the dead of night. Their advanced sensors failed to detect the approaching threat until it was too late. Wolves, larger, faster, and far more aggressive than anything recorded in the Council's databanks, descended on them in complete silence. The creatures moved with precision, targeting the weakest points in the soldiers' armor. Within minutes, the entire platoon was overwhelmed. One survivor, barely alive, managed to transmit a single, garbled message back to command. "They're using animals, like soldiers." The aliens were baffled. Their previous intelligence on Earth had classified wolves as mere predators, creatures of instinct with no capacity for strategy. Yet these wolves didn't behave like wild animals. They operated in coordinated packs, ambushing with military precision and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. Analysis of their movements suggested something impossible: they were being guided. As the days went on, the reports grew more alarming. Entire battalions disappeared in the dense forests and tundras, their remains found scattered and torn apart. Packs of wolves seemed to be everywhere, striking with surgical precision and vanishing into the wilderness. The aliens increased their patrols, deploying more advanced weapons and reconnaissance technology. But it didn't matter. For every wolf they killed, it seemed two more took its place. The galactic forces began to realize they were fighting a war on two fronts. The humans had retreated to fortified cities, leaving the wilderness as a battlefield dominated by creatures they had once dismissed as insignificant. The wolves weren't just fighting, they were winning. And somewhere, unseen but ever present, was the hand of the one commanding them. The alien commanders convened in frustration. Their technological superiority was being undermined by a force they didn't understand. Every strategy they devised was countered with brutal efficiency. Advanced drones sent into the forests were destroyed before they could transmit useful data. Traps and ambushes they set for the wolves were either avoided or turned against them. The wolves weren't just reacting, they were anticipating. Among the invaders, whispers of fear began to spread. These weren't ordinary predators. They seemed to know the terrain better than the soldiers, exploiting every natural advantage. Even the most experienced troops found themselves outmatched by the creatures' ferocity and intelligence. What unnerved them most were the reports of how the wolves moved. They didn't scatter randomly or attack haphazardly. They worked together, their coordination almost human. One commander, skeptical of the rumors, demanded evidence. He ordered his troops to bait the wolves into a confrontation, confident that overwhelming firepower would end the threat. A massive force was deployed to a remote valley, equipped with heavy artillery and traps designed to funnel the wolves into a kill zone. The soldiers waited in tense silence as night fell. Hours passed with no sign of movement. Just when they began to think the plan had failed, the first howl pierced the darkness. It was joined by others, forming an eerie chorus that seemed to come from every direction. The soldiers held their ground, weapons ready, but the howls kept moving, echoing from the cliffs, the trees, the shadows. It wasn't just a signal, it was psychological warfare. The wolves struck without warning, emerging from the dark with uncanny precision. They bypassed the traps entirely, striking at the flanks and targeting critical equipment. The aliens' advanced weaponry was useless in the chaos. Wolves tore through their ranks, disabling key systems and forcing the soldiers into disarray. What should have been an overwhelming display of power turned into a massacre. When dawn broke, the valley was silent again. The alien commander, gravely wounded but alive, surveyed the carnage. His forces had been decimated, their weapons scattered and useless. The wolves were gone, leaving no trace except the destruction they had wrought. But the final blow wasn't physical, it was psychological. Among the wreckage, carved into the side of an abandoned vehicle, was a simple, chilling message: "You're out of your depth." The commanders, now fully aware they were losing, scrambled to understand how the humans had turned a pack of predators into a disciplined, lethal force. Surveillance finally caught a glimpse of their answer. In the middle of a dense forest, cloaked in shadow, stood a man. He was surrounded by wolves, his movements calm and deliberate as the creatures obeyed his every command. The aliens couldn't comprehend what they were seeing, a human using wolves as soldiers. They had underestimated Earth, but now they understood, this wasn't just a fight against humans. It was a fight against everything Earth could summon to its defense. The alien high command, desperate to regain control, dispatched their most elite unit to neutralize the human and his wolves. This was no ordinary squad, they were trained for planetary invasions, engineered with reflexes and weapons far beyond what most species could handle. They were confident in their superiority, assured that no primitive world could withstand their might. The forest was eerily quiet as they moved in, their senses heightened by the tension of the mission. Thermal scans picked up faint traces of movement, but the readings were inconsistent. The wolves seemed to vanish into the environment, their heat signatures blending seamlessly with the surroundings. It wasn't long before the squad realized they weren't the hunters. They were the prey. The first attack came swiftly. A soldier at the rear of the formation vanished with a strangled cry, his signal going dark before anyone could react. The squad tightened their formation, weapons scanning every angle, but the wolves didn't attack again, not immediately. Instead, they circled, their growls reverberating through the trees, a low and menacing sound that frayed nerves and broke discipline. The human appeared without warning, stepping into view with a calm confidence that sent a chill through the alien soldiers. He wasn't armed with anything more advanced than a rifle slung over his shoulder and a blade at his side. It wasn't his weapons that made him dangerous, it was the way he carried himself, the way the wolves flanked him like an extension of his will. "You've underestimated us," he said, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. "You think strength comes from technology, from weapons. But strength comes from understanding. From unity. From the bond between us and this world." Before the aliens could respond, the wolves attacked in perfect unison. It wasn't a chaotic rush but a calculated strike, each wolf targeting a specific soldier. The aliens fired their weapons, their shots lighting up the forest, but they were fighting shadows. The wolves moved too fast, too precisely, and their armor wasn't enough to protect them from the razor-sharp teeth and coordinated ferocity of the pack. The human didn't stay on the sidelines. He moved with the wolves, a blur of motion that struck with surgical precision. Every swing of his blade, every shot from his rifle, was perfectly timed and placed. He was more than a soldier, he was a force of nature, fighting not just for survival but to protect everything his planet stood for. By the time it was over, the elite squad was no more. The human stood among the wolves, his calm demeanor unchanged, as the last alien fell. He looked down at the broken armor and advanced weapons, then glanced at the sky where the alien fleet hovered, watching from orbit. "You think you're gods because you've conquered other worlds," he said softly, knowing they were listening. "But this is Earth. We don't break. We don't kneel. And we don't fight alone." As the wolves howled into the night, the alien commanders finally understood the truth. Earth was not a planet to conquer. It was a battlefield they would never survive.